The mass entered the vicinity of a major subduction zone with complete indifference to the turmoil of tectonic activity nearby. Sensors positioned along the region detected the strongest pulses ever recorded in the history of the event. They registered uniform pressure waves that rippled across the deep ocean floor. These waves interacted with geological formations and produced faint secondary tremors. Although these tremors caused no damage, their unusual patterns captured immediate attention. Nothing in known natural activity produced such consistent coupling between a moving source and seismic readings. As the mass drew closer to the deep fault system, its acoustic signature began to shift. Instead of steady pulses, it generated elongated surges that rose and fell in slow sweeping cycles. It was as if the source were adjusting to the immense drop in terrain. Analysis showed that these surges traveled through multiple sound channels simultaneously. That means the mass extended through a vast vertical range. Such vertical span hinted at a structure of astonishing scale, one that dwarfed even the mightiest geological features within reach of measurement. The final moments of clarity occurred when several monitoring stations registered a monumental resonance. This resonance lasted longer than any previous surge and seemed to fill the entire deep ocean basin with a single extended vibration. It faded gradually rather than abruptly. That fade suggested that the mass moved beyond a region where sound can easily travel. The subduction zone contains deep folds where parts of the crust dive into the mantle. Anything entering these folds becomes extremely difficult to detect acoustically. If the mass descended into one of them, the ocean itself would conceal it completely. In the hours that followed, all sensors reported diminishing signals. The once powerful pulses lost coherence. They stretched into barely distinguishable murmurs and then vanished altogether. The abrupt silence prompted a thorough review of every sensor for malfunction. No errors were found. The source had simply moved beyond the reach of long-range acoustic detection. Its disappearance created more questions than answers. Without additional readings, no one could determine whether the mass continued onward or settled within the concealed depths of the trench. Researchers reflected on what the long sequence of recordings suggested about the nature of the unknown presence. The phenomenon displayed movement consistent with an immense structure or organism. It reacted subtly to seafloor topography. It traveled thousands of kilometers with unwavering direction. Its resonance carried across nearly the entire Pacific. Each of these observations reinforced the idea that something extraordinary had migrated beneath the ocean and then retreated into unreachable depths. The fact that it left no trace after entering the subduction zone marked a profound mystery. Global interest in the event eventually shifted from active surveillance to ongoing contemplation. The recordings became a reference for studies of unexplained acoustic activity. They also served as a reminder that vast regions of the Earth remain beyond full human understanding. The Pacific holds innumerable secrets. Some may remain concealed forever within trenches that stretch toward the mantle. The event demonstrated that even with advanced monitoring technology, there are limits to what can be observed. The silence that followed the last detection did not bring relief. Instead, it left a lingering awareness that the planet may contain mobile structures or forces of colossal scale that have yet to be recognized. Something gigantic moved beneath the Pacific, traveled with resolute purpose, and vanished into the most inaccessible depths known. Its journey remains one of the most enigmatic episodes in the history of ocean observation, a reminder that the deep Earth still keeps secrets far beyond imagination. The earliest hints of an unusual phenomenon under the Pacific appeared in the form of faint, low-frequency pulses recorded by distant listening arrays. These pulses were initially dismissed as background turbulence caused by large-scale storms and shifting currents. Only later did careful comparison show that they followed a recurring structure that did not match any known natural source. Each recording presented a slow, rhythmic signature that remained steady across vast distances. This regularity suggested a coherent origin rather than chaotic oceanic noise. Analysts began to suspect that something immense was generating the pattern from far below the surface. Oceanic monitoring facilities rely on steady reference profiles that describe how sound travels through vast layers of water. These profiles allow them to isolate natural events such as underwater landslides and regional volcanic movements. When the first strange pulses appeared, they fit none of these categories. The sound behaved as though produced by an object that maintained a consistent trajectory. At first, many thought that a previously undocumented geological process might be responsible. Yet the data did not support this interpretation. The pulses lacked the explosive peaks that accompany tectonic stress release, and instead showed a broad, smooth envelope that extended for unusually long durations. Investigators mapped the earliest signatures across thousands of kilometers and noticed something even more puzzling. The energy distribution suggested movement along a slow, constant path roughly parallel to several major mid-ocean ridges. Such alignment would be a remarkable coincidence if caused by random geological deformation. The idea of a migrating acoustic source began to take shape. This possibility introduced a wide range of questions about what type of mass could generate such uniform power and endurance. The Pacific is known for dramatic contrasts in depth and pressure, and its deepest trenches remain among the least explored regions of the planet. Sound from these areas often becomes distorted as it crosses layers with shifting temperatures and salinity. Yet even with this distortion, the mysterious pulses showed little degradation. Their clarity indicated a source large enough to project into multiple acoustic channels at once. The implication was unsettling, since only exceptionally large events, such as major seismic ruptures, usually exhibit that amount of penetration. Researchers who examined the earliest scans described a sense of growing curiosity mixed with concern. They were not encountering evidence of ordinary marine life or routine tectonic activity. Instead, they found a sustained low-frequency pattern that behaved with deliberate consistency. It seemed to drift with a quiet, unstoppable presence beneath a vast ocean where sunlight never reaches. The more attention the scans received, the clearer it became that the phenomenon demanded continuous monitoring. Continued analysis over several weeks revealed a concluding insight. Whatever produced the signal moved with a scale and stability far beyond anything previously recorded by civilian monitoring programs. There was no indication of mechanical origin, since the acoustic footprint lacked the buzzing harmonics created by ship propulsion, nor did it match known signatures of undersea landslides or magma movements. This left the scientific community with a profound enigma. Something enormous was moving in the deep, and nothing in established literature offered an explanation. Once the existence of a persistent acoustic source was accepted, global ocean data centers began to coordinate their efforts. Their archives held decades of recordings from long-range underwater microphones placed along strategic stretches of the Pacific. Analysts pulled older data and discovered hints of similar pulses that had been overlooked. These faint historical records suggested that the phenomenon might have been active for far longer than initially assumed. However, earlier traces were weaker and less coherent, which implied that the source had either grown stronger or moved closer to major listening arrays. Teams constructed large-scale models that attempted to track the path of the pulses over time. The models indicated a slow, purposeful migration from the Western Pacific toward regions with complex geological features. The trajectory appeared too consistent to attribute to drifting masses or submarine sediment flows. Each new data point reinforced the idea of a continuous journey across immense distances. These conclusions encouraged closer study of the acoustic layers that carried the sound. Sound in the deep ocean often travels through a natural channel shaped by water density and temperature gradients. Within this channel, noise can travel extraordinary distances with minimal loss. The mysterious source used this channel with remarkable efficiency. Even small adjustments in its movement were reflected in measurable changes in recorded patterns. Observers noted that the pulses sometimes intensified in a way that suggested rising or sinking through these layers. This vertical motion introduced even more questions about the nature of the mass involved. Attempts to translate the rhythm of the pulses into mechanical measurements yielded striking results. The energy levels implied a scale rivaling that of major geological events, although the consistency showed none of the chaos that accompanies such processes. The movement did not resemble drifting ice, underwater gas release, or deep volcanic tremors. Instead, It resembled the slow, deliberate passage of an incomprehensibly massive object sliding across the abyssal plains with unwavering momentum. Detailed mapping highlighted an unsettling trend. The source repeatedly altered its course with slight arcs that corresponded to underwater mountain ranges and trenches. This implied awareness of the terrain, or at least interaction with it. Normally only living organisms demonstrate such adaptive movement, and yet the scale involved ruled out any known species. Even the largest documented forms of deep ocean life could not influence acoustic patterns at the magnitude observed. The new maps were presented as a sequence of shifting ellipses that represented probable zones of movement. With each passing week, the ellipses elongated as the source continued its march across the Pacific. Researchers described these maps as charts of an invisible migration that spanned distances usually associated with tectonic plates rather than biological entities. The thought that something of such scale could remain undetected for so long created an atmosphere of growing unease. As the monitoring continued, the phenomenon displayed steady acceleration. The pulses grew more spaced apart, which indicated that the source increased its speed. This change contradicted every existing theory because geological forces do not accelerate across such distances. Only a cohesive mobile mass would behave in this manner, and yet none could account for the quiet, immense stability that defined the signals. The Pacific remained silent above, but deep below, something gigantic moved with relentless certainty. As the acoustic signatures intensified, scientific institutions across multiple nations began independent assessments. These assessments aimed to determine whether the phenomenon posed any risk to coastal regions or major seafloor infrastructure. Initial findings showed no signs of destructive turbulence. Yet the sheer magnitude of the pulses raised concerns about what might happen if the source approached seismic zones. Even minor interactions with sensitive geological areas could potentially influence regional stress fields. Study groups proposed numerous theories and attempted to fit each to the accumulating data. One theory considered the possibility of an enormous slab of dense rock breaking free from a deeper layer and gliding along a smoother surface. However, this idea quickly lost support. A rock mass would produce grinding, irregular bursts rather than smooth, rhythmic pulses that retained coherence through long travel. Furthermore, the path of the phenomenon curved gently at several points, which suggested active directional changes rather than passive sliding. Another theory suggested a pocket of superheated material rising slowly through the upper mantle and disturbing the ocean floor from below. But this phenomenon traveled horizontally for thousands of kilometers instead of rising vertically as thermal material would. In addition, temperature readings from multiple oceanographic expeditions showed no widespread anomalies. The event, therefore, could not be linked to a hidden volcanic plume or mantle convection process. Some researchers investigated whether the pulses might originate from an unknown form of underwater gas oscillation. They studied comparisons to methane eruptions and trapped pressure waves. That line of inquiry also failed, since gas bursts generate abrupt explosive sounds. What the sensors detected instead was a continuous low-frequency resonance that acted like the heartbeat of a single entity. It ebbed and surged with remarkable steadiness and displayed a persistence unmatched by any known geological or chemical system. Thus, attention turned to the possibility that the phenomenon represented a previously undocumented class of mobile deep ocean mass. Although no biological organism of that scale exists in recorded science, the ocean covers such vast unexplored territory that some argued this scenario should not be dismissed outright. However, the mass moved with a level of steadiness that did not resemble known biological patterns. Natural creatures tend to produce variable sound signatures based on motion and energy expenditure. The pulses in question maintained a formidable constancy that seemed almost mechanical. By this point, global monitoring networks exchanged data at accelerated frequency. The phenomenon had become a subject of worldwide scientific interest and quiet apprehension. Observers noticed that the pulse amplitude increased as the mass entered an area with several long trenches. These trenches create natural conduits for sound and allowed the signal to stretch across entire ocean basins. A sensation of scale became evident. The source was now moving in a region where depths plunge farther than almost anywhere else on Earth. Each new reading hinted at dimensions that challenged scientific understanding. In the final weeks of analysis during this period, researchers reached an unsettling realization. Regardless of its nature, the moving mass displayed persistence, direction, and power far beyond any known oceanic process. It appeared to travel with purpose through the darkest regions of the Pacific. This raised profound questions about the deep layers of the planet and about the possibility that the Earth may still harbor immense mobile structures whose existence has never been documented. Curiosity grew into quiet alarm as the mass approached one of the most active subduction zones on the planet. We upload new videos every single day, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps the channel grow. Tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next. Your ideas might be in our next upload. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of our community. Stay tuned, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.